Welcome everyone. Thanks for coming out on Easter Monday. It's always the lowest attendance of the year generally. So thank you for coming out. And I hope you've enjoyed your Easter holiday. My name's Damien, and I'm leading this this month's Monday nights. And I think by now most of you would have seen that each month a different person leads the class, and people pick the topic. You know, they all pick the topic that generally is something that's interesting to them. This is my theory. I always pick something that is interesting to me, or something that I've been thinking about in my own sort of practice. And so then I sort of try to share that thinking with the Monday night class. So what I've been thinking about in recent months is complacency. Like for me, particularly, first of all, complacency in regard to my practice of meditation or my practice of Buddhism. After doing it for a long time, maybe some sort of thought has come into my mind that I've done enough. Like that my level of meditation or my behavioural thing or whatever is enough. And I realise that that's a very destructive thought. And so this this idea of complacency, the problem with complacency. And then when I was thinking about it, I was thinking this applies actually in all aspects of our life, whether with our relationships or in our work performance or our relationship to other people, even our sports, or and you see this whole sort of gym culture is about combating complacency. The athlete, the hedge fund manager, the prime minister or whatever, everybody has this battle with complacency. And so it's probably not a shock that complacency is also a problem in your meditation or your spiritual practice or your personal development. And so that's sort of what I've been thinking about. So, and in conjunction with that, we use this term Dharma. So that's a Sanskrit word, and so the general, let's say, context of that word in English is that it's the Dharma are the practices or the collected teachings of the Buddha. But technically, the word Dharma in Sanskrit is the word for phenomena, phenomena. And the derivation of the word is that it is something. A phenomena is something that holds its own identity, which is a very interesting thing. How did that word come to mean the teachings of the Buddha? And it's possibly around this idea of that the Dharma teachings hold their own identity as being beneficial. But so when the Tibetan Lamas talk about the word Dharma, they focus on this idea of holding, that the Dharma is something which can hold us back from suffering. It holds us back from suffering. If we develop the Dharma in our mind, it will hold us back from suffering. So there's sort of aspects here that are particularly Buddhist aspects. And coming to Tara Institute is open to everybody. And, Tara Institute or, me being around Tara Institute a long time, we're all very happy that people can come and take anything of benefit from what they hear here. And there's no strings attached to have to be Buddhist. And there's also no expectation, in a way, of becoming Buddhist. And so all the Monday night teachers, for certain, are teaching from the point of view of, here's something that I think is beneficial, and you're welcome to take it or not take it as you like. So that's our approach here. However, there is some sort of progression of, taking things more seriously. So this idea of complacency. So, with meditation, you sit down and you meditate, and 5 minutes, that feels great, or 1 minute, and that feels great, and you sort of have a little bit of peace and happiness, and some sort of diversion from your normal mental turmoil. Okay, so that's beneficial. That is beneficial. But it's beneficial in a really temporary meaning, in a really temporary sort of context, So, okay, you get 5 minutes of peace and happiness, and then you walk out, and for the next, there's a period of time where your mind is a bit affected by that, but then all of the distractions and your regular thinking comes back, and so you return to your normal disturbance, your normal level of disturbance and frustrations and anger and resentments and loneliness. It comes back. So Shantideva, who was one of the great Indian masters, living somewhere around, I think, the year 600, 700 AD, or current era, or whatever they say. In his book, The Bodhisattva's Way of Life, he says, if you just want a few minutes of peace and happiness, or enjoyment, some sort of distraction or thing, just go drinking and gambling. Meditation and Dharma practice and all that is not this momentary, this sort of a momentary sort of peace and happiness of doing a bit of meditation. His response was, well, just try drinking and gambling. You'll get a momentary buzz out of that as well. So we're encouraged to somehow do something a lot more extensive. And so understanding Dharma is trying to get a grasp on what it is that is more extensive than just a few minutes of peaceful, happy sort of meditation. And so again, this is where, for me, thinking about the complacency, the complacency of engaged in meditation or engaged in listening to the lamas teach, and thinking, oh, that's really good, that's great, I really like that, but doing nothing about it, like listening to Geshe Doga or Geshe Lobsang teaching, or the Monday night teachers, and then thinking, oh, that sounds really good, love and compassion for everyone, oh yeah, I like that, but not actually changing your mind, not actually sort of somehow finding the effort or the way to put in effort to change your mind. And so again, this enemy of complacency. And so so this is what I've been thinking, just in regard to my own practice, letting my habitual normal behavioural patterns just sort of return, or just for them to dominate me again, or to be sort of falling into some sort of habitual space, without sort of any rigour in wanting to tackle it. There's some sort of comfort in not really doing anything, in terms of development. Not putting in the effort, not facing the reality of ourselves, so that we verily, very happily look at others and say, God, he's angry. She's so vain. He's so miserly. We're so talented at being able to identify all those things in others. But we're not looking into a mirror on ourselves. We're not really engaging in a thorough look at ourselves. And again, I see this as a sort of a complacency and a safe space. I would hope that people say Tara Institute is not a safe space, because when you go there, you are going to look into a mirror and you're going to see everything about yourself. Don't look for a safe space. Look for something that will challenge you, to really, so that you see your miserliness, your pride, your arrogance, your anger, your desire, desire and attachment, lust, your deceitfulness, your insularity. Really see these things in yourself, and then not be complacent, because I think we can get glimpses of these things, but we will still be complacent, which is very interesting. That we can actually see our faults. So, like with meditation or reading, like reading Dharma books, listening to teachings, we can start to really see our faults, but we remain complacent. And that's a very interesting sort of situation. So that's sort of what I've been thinking about in terms of myself, that trying to understand, what can I do about this complacency? So, and, like my particular inclination, or what always, the part of the Buddhist teachings that's always been most appealing to me is the thought transformation teachings as techniques to, understand the way the afflicted emotions are causing me to act, and then trying to get a different perspective. I think the essence of the thought transformation is changing your perspective of the interrelationships of yourself and others. So, again, so complacency again is a problem. So the complacency, I think, from a Buddhist point of view, is actually a form of laziness. It's a form of laziness, of not stepping up to the process of changing your mind. And so the antidote to that, most effectively, is what they call joyous effort, or enthusiastic perseverance. And so this is actually one of the 6 perfections. So on the path to enlightenment, the practitioner gradually perfects 6 different qualities. So generosity is the first that is perfected, morality, patience, enthusiastic perseverance or joyful effort, concentration, and then wisdom. And in addition to them perfecting those, it's also even like for us on the path, like even right at the very beginning, to start understanding generosity and to practice generosity, to understand morality, non-harmfulness, the various actions of non-harming, and to practice that. Developing patience, understanding the faults of anger and applying patience. Then joyful effort. So here, I think as an antidote to complacency, one of the aspects is really taking delight in, let's say, change. Really taking delight in changing your mind to a more positive, a more kind, a more loving and compassionate, a more forgiving, a more equanimous, seeing everybody equally, to change your mind into something that is doing that more than our normal biased, solitary, jealous, resentful state. So this idea of really trying to develop joy in practicing thought transformation, or a joy in identifying your own issues, really identifying your own issues, whatever they are, and seeing your resistance, to really see your resistance to change. So we just had the Easter course here, and one of the things that came up in the discussion was, you've probably heard a lot of people here doing meditations where you might visualize the Buddha. You might visualize the Buddha and you imagine blessings coming down from the Buddha in the form of white light and, dissolving into you and somehow pushing out all your negativities. And you can imagine all your negativities going out through your soles of your feet and other lower orifices and stuff, being pushed out. That visualization. So one of the questions that came up is, what is a blessing? What is a blessing? This is in most religions, they talk about blessings from Jesus or blessings from the heavens or whatever. So one of the descriptions of blessings is change. A blessing is a change in your mind. So these visualizations, when we couple the visualization with, let's say, with understanding that anger is destructive. My anger is destructive of my happiness and it's destructive of the happiness of others. And so having a resolve to be free of anger and then doing this sort of visualization, that the real blessing, the blessing that comes is actually change in your mind. A change in your mind is the blessing of the Buddha. So I found that idea very interesting to work with, as a way of thinking what goes on if we do all this meditation. And, we can't see the Buddha and we can't see the blessings, but we're doing this meditation. And so what is it that we're hoping to happen? And I think if we are hoping for a change and we experience a change, then that is the blessing, So I thought that idea was quite interesting as a way of practicing, to embrace the idea of change. So, similarly then, even with our meditation, so I wasn't particularly bad-mouthing meditation before, although I think we have to be quite serious about our meditation, that it's not just about the 2 minutes or 5 minutes of, flaky concentration that we bring, but it's a stepping stone to actually really develop strong concentration. So the idea is even, and this is not just a Buddhist practice, but the development of, in Buddhist terms, what's called calm abiding. So single-pointed. It's the ability for the mind to be effortlessly focusing on a chosen object without any distraction, eliminating the two faults. So the two main faults are called sinking. So there's this fault of sinking, mental sinking. And so if you do meditation, you sort of go into this trance-like sort of dullness state. And I think possibly there's some traditions that misconceive of that sunken state as something really beneficial. But from a Buddhist point of view, that sunken state of your consciousness being really dulled down is actually not productive. And it's called mental sinking. Then the other obstacle is excitement. And so excitement is where the mind is overly active, and, for us, it initially manifests as within a fraction of a second, we've already gone to another thought. So if the instruction is to focus on the breath, within, I don't know how small a passage of time, but often within a fraction of a second, your mind has gone somewhere else. And if not gone somewhere else, it started to actually discuss the breathing meditation itself. These voices come and it starts sort of talking about the breathing meditation itself. That is also a distraction. That is a distraction. So when we meditate, we have to sort of fight this analytical voice or this commentary, this vocal commentary to our own meditation that can occur. You're too fast, you're too slow. What causes the in-breath? What is it that stops the breath and causes the in-breath? Is it loud? There's so many different thoughts that we have. This is excitement. It's some sort of mental energy engaged in, and it's a type of distraction. It is a distraction to just being able to hold the mere, awareness, the mere awareness of the breath coming in, going out. So when we're focusing on the breath. So I'm not a big fan of the meditations where, people say focus on the sensation at the tip of the nose, because it's a physical sensation, and then you tend to discuss that sensation. And if you talk about, following the breath right down into the abdomen and filling your abdomen and then up again, it's like a road map. You're looking at the Melways. For those of you who know what a Melways is, you're looking at the Melways and you're sort of tracing your route of the breath coming in, moving around. And so that's also it's too much. The breathing meditation is super simple, and we have to fight to be super simple in our mind, and it's quite a battle. So again, complacency in our meditation again is a real obstacle, and I know that is for me as well, particularly for me in breathing meditation, and that to have the rigour to do it properly. And so again, complacency is a problem. So with that, is anybody here for the very first time tonight? Yeah, welcome. I hope you're enjoying something different. Yeah. So let's do some meditation. And have you done some meditation before? Or? A little bit, yeah. Okay. So our motivation, very important. If we enter something, any activity, either in work or life, relationships or whatever, and our motivation is not clear, then the outcome also will not be clear. So in Buddhist practice, we're encouraged to have the highest motivation that we can muster. And the particular idea is an altruistic motivation. So even a short meditation, we can motivate ourselves that I am doing this meditation to benefit others. And the way that it can benefit others is that I will, through meditation, I will subdue my anger, I will subdue my resentment, my pride and arrogance towards others. I will subdue my grasping miserliness, so we can think like this. And by doing that, I will benefit others. It will actually be something of benefit to others. So this really trying to cultivate this altruistic motivation. And also to think that it's a stepping stone, ultimately it's a stepping stone even to complete enlightenment, and in that way to benefit others. So we'll focus on the breath, and the particular way here to try to focus on the breath is just the awareness of the breath, like this, some sort of internal mental awareness of the breath coming in and going out. And we'll hold our concentration absolutely 100% on that. Just that coming and going of the breath and the awareness of that. And so start by letting all of the thoughts go from your mind and bring your awareness within yourself, and then turn your attention just onto the coming and going of the breath, and don't let it be distracted. just relax your concentration and examine what happened in your meditation. And if you have that sort of voice that is sort of somehow talking to you about the meditation, or somehow there's a verbalization going on, think one way to overcome that. The trouble is that our mind is drawn to that distraction. Our mind is drawn to that distraction. And so we have to somehow hold our mind just on the breath, the coming and going of the breath. So for us as beginners, we have to apply effort, So when talking about calm abiding, one aspect of that is that the concentration becomes effortless. But for us, we have to apply effort to hold our mind on the object. And so we're battling the tendency to be distracted, and we're battling the excitement of listening to the party that's somewhere up the road here, that I don't know if you could hear it, but the beating of the music. So we have to apply effort to keep the mind just focusing on the breath and solely on the breath. So let's just repeat the meditation for a few minutes and applying effort to keep the concentration just on the breath. You can relax and just bring your concentration back to the room. So we've got some time now for some discussion. If there's any questions or anything anybody like to share or talk about, we've got some time. Were you counting those times? Yeah, I think it happens in milliseconds. Yeah.
Curious about something. Monks typically have a pretty sort of strict regimen as far as what they observe.
Routine, yeah. Yeah.
One of which is pretty early morning, right?
Yeah.
Kind of upward rising energy or something. I find this time of night I'm usually getting quite tired, so I feel my mind's pretty prone to sort of slipping into almost like dream state.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I'm sure how it sort of can be bad practice to meditate poorly because you sort of fall back.
Yeah.
I wonder whether, what times of day do they particularly observe, and not after meals as well? Isn't that a thing?
I don't know what monks do. No, I do know a little bit, but I can't speak for monks. But let's say I'll talk about myself. So many teachers have said, meditate in the mornings, right? I tend to meditate at night, for whatever reason. I just find the morning... but I find here, like here tonight, very conducive to... Maybe it's because everybody else here is also meditating. I think there is some sort of support, I think. And the space is... it's very quiet in here, particularly now, Easter time. But routine is really encouraged. And the place where you meditate is also there's a spot where it could be an armchair, or it could be next to a window, or it could be anywhere. You go to that place, and so your mind is already tuned in to the idea, I'm going to meditate. And you don't contaminate that place with sleeping or watching the TV or spending all the time on your phone or something like that. In a way you respect the integrity of that place. So I think that helps. So there is a practice called the 6 preparatory practices for entering a meditation, and that's having a place that is set up, and if you're a Buddhist, having offerings to the Buddha, and keep it clean. There's these sort of aspects of keeping it clean, and so that can help, having a dedicated place. But also going and sitting on a bench seat looking at the sea, there's sometimes that being in a good environment up on high in the mountains, all these sort of things, these are all conducive aspects to a place to meditate. And maybe here also there's an aspect of this place, many great meditators, visiting teachers and Geshe-Doga, Geshe-Lob saying, have somehow made this a better place because of their practice. But I think, and again, to talk about complacency, I do not engage in an early morning meditation. I'm up out of bed and trying to get off to work as quickly as I can. And I tend to meditate late at night, so which is contrary to the general advice, of meditating in the early morning before you eat breakfast. So you wake up and then you meditate, and then you stop and have breakfast, and then but like, let's say like Geshe Doga, he would have for many years. Now that he's 90, it might have changed a little bit, but he would be doing at least 5 hours of practices every morning. From 4:30 or something every morning. So, but that's also let's say like prayer practices or structured meditational practices as well. But so they do say the mornings are better, but you have to you have to work out on your own circumstances too. So not good. So what you can do is really separate those activities. Go and have a 20-minute sleep. Go and have a little power nap or something, and then go and meditate. So you just be a little bit, do what works, somehow, yeah. And keep it short. That's the other thing is, like in the development of calm abiding, the instruction is that you do up to 18 sessions of meditation per day. Like you do multiple sessions, short, high quality, So and the trap that I've fallen into is I trained my mind in bad meditation in the beginning, and that's a bad habit that is very hard for me to shake. So if you can, when you start off, train your mind in good habits, short, clear, well-focused meditation. Yeah.
The whole sort of point of meditation is to take it outside of the actual practice and apply it to all those discursive thoughts throughout the day and sort of get those.
And to some degree, it's a natural consequence of good meditation that you will, the quality in, of mindfulness. Like, so from the Buddhist definition, mindfulness is remembering from one moment to the next, and remembering. So let's say you have the intention to free yourself of anger. Mindfulness is a quality that remembers that your anger's off the table. And so in the memory of your continuum of your mind from one moment to the next, and then with this other quality of alertness, between the mindfulness and the alertness, it remembers that you don't want to generate anger. It can spot anger arising, and the mindfulness keeps your mind away from anger. That quality of mindfulness. So it's a sort of an active participant, and the more that we meditate, the more those two aspects increase. So instead of going through your day completely unaware of, where did that jealousy come from? Where did that anger come from? It just sort of springs up on you and suddenly you're really angry. The practice of meditation will cause you to generate this mindfulness and alertness, and it enables you to become aware of what's happening in your mind and do something about it. So it's a consequence of developing concentration. Yeah, Victoria?
Philosophy
Yeah, so the question is about, what is within our ability to change and what isn't in our ability to change, right? So the first answer is that everything is within our orbit of change, the ability to change. And the second answer is to change, you have to battle countless lifetimes of habituation. Right. So it can, or just whether you call it samsara or whatever you want to call it, but just from this idea, let's say even in one lifetime, you've spent X number of years in a certain behavioural pattern, and so there's a momentum and a habituation with that, which is very difficult to break. Even if you talk about in psychological terms or whatever, a child with a poor childhood and some bad habits established young and then reinforced, by the time they're 50 or something, those habits can be very difficult to break. So imagine countless lifetimes of bad habituation. Well, but I'm first of all talking in the negative sense that from those countless lifetimes, we've got all these habituations, which are difficult to break. Don't underestimate how difficult some of them are to break, but they have arisen only through habituation, and hence they can be overcome also through habituation. So the practice of meditation and reading and contemplating and all that is establishing a counter-habituation, And so the point of Dharma practice, so-called Dharma practice, is I am trying to apply a counter-habituation to my accumulated negative habituations. So just on that front, and I don't know if it's true because it could have been an AI-generated story, but I'm presuming it's true. There was one of these things popped up on my phone, and it was talking about John D. Rockefeller, the billionaire, he's Standard Oil was his company, and in his day he was so wealthy, probably even more wealthy than Elon Musk, in relative terms. And he was so wealthy and so powerful that in the end the US government broke his company up into 7 pieces or something, split it up so that he didn't have that much control over things. Anyway, he was the model robber baron of, American industrial behaviour, of deceiving his competitors and, all these bad practices, even, kicking some of his workers out and sticking them in tents in the snow and then sending the National Guard in, and they killed 13 of them. And there's all these bad things. But by the age of his mid-50s, he was extremely unwell, extremely unhealthy, and probably only had a very short time to live. And the company forced him they brought in a consultant as to how to change his perception, because he was the most hated man in America. And the consultant said to him, and he kept himself locked up in his house, he was so hated, And the consultant said to him to go out on the street and give pennies to children. So he would go out on the street and hand out money to children, and so then the newspapers would photograph it and all that, and so he somehow managed to change his public image. But he got a real benefit out of being generous. And so he then started on a whole practice of generosity, and he founded the Rockefeller Foundation. and he started sponsoring big hospitals, built big hospitals, did all these sort of great works. His health transformed, and he lived to the age of 97 and died a peaceful death. So the interesting thing is, like from a Buddhist point of view, we would say, yes, that's possible, that the changing of your behaviour and your mind can transform all sorts of aspects of your life, even from the hardest, coldest, most cruel basis. It can be transformed. And I'm not saying John D. Rockefeller is maybe, this could be just some sort of AI-generated emotional piece that you get every day. I get them every day. But, sorry? Yeah. So, but certainly from a Buddhist point of view, that's possible. The transformation of a person from terrible to fantastic is possible. But it's a battle, and it's a battle against all of our natural habituations. And so part of meditation is to really try to identify those things within you and then make an effort to reverse them. So, and that's the aspect of thought transformation, Sorry? Oh, yeah.
Would you say karma binding is more or less the goal of that type of single-pointed meditation?
So the question is whether karma binding is the goal. No, I'd say no, it's not the goal, but a person may enter a dedicated karma binding retreat and a practice. So from the Buddhist path point of view, we have to generate karma binding. So, because it's a tool, and that tool enables us then to correctly meditate on reality. So our ability right now to try to meditate on the nature of reality is really limited because we become so distracted and so unsettled in that meditation. So the ability to be completely single point focused is a tool that we have to acquire to be able to use. It's analytical, but it's an analytical meditation within the context of single pointedness. So in the terms of the path, to some degree we need to have single point concentration, even to generate complete compassion for others, or to fully develop love for others. We have to be able to hold the object really purely, without distraction. But more importantly, like from the point of view of developing wisdom, is that we develop calm abiding, and that power of that single pointedness, we then turn to the nature of reality. And because there's that complete power of single pointedness, and in conjunction with some sort of physical capability and mental joy, with that single pointedness, that enables us to really meditate thoroughly on the nature of reality. And then that produces a wisdom which is affected by that, the power of that calm abiding. And then that enables us eventually to remove the obstacles to the sort of direct, let's say, non-conceptual experience of reality, which is then a process of getting to that. And so that quality is, if we attain that quality, it's an irreversible quality. That in the bigger picture of all existence, the attainment of that quality of reality experience is an irreversible quality. So whereas, from a Buddhist point of view, in our past lives we've all generated karma binding at some point. And karma binding is not restricted to Buddhism. Many of the other religions have that same quality. Even, if you read some of the medieval sort of saints in the monasteries and that, the type of experiences they're talking about are the experience of that single-pointed concentration. So, but it's a tool. So when we're meditating, we might say, I'm doing karma-abiding meditation, but that's not the goal. The goal is to develop this union of karma-abiding and wisdom, and then eventually to come to the sort of non-conceptual direct realization of the nature of reality, and then that becomes a basis for all of the perfections and the progression, eliminating all of the obstructions, eliminating all of the afflictive emotions and eliminating all of the obstructions to the state of enlightenment. So it's a tool. Okay, let's dedicate, your attendance, the great value of your attendance, your engagement in the meditation and the discussion. This is all something rare. This is something rare. And think that it takes the form of a ball of white light. Everybody's virtue, we can call it a virtue, in a form of a ball of white light. Imagine it comes above your own head and completely pours down, completely fills your body and your mind, fills your body with light, completely composed of light, and your mind clear and open. And then imagine rays of light go out to your family, to the people close to you, and to every living being, giving them the benefit of this meditation and discussion, imagining that it frees them from all of their problems and suffering. And then imagine those light rays dissolve back into you. And just feel a sort of sense of joy at being able to visualize sharing this benefit. So thank you very much. I will be back next Monday. I hope you can all come along. And if you have time to stay for a cup of tea in the dining room, there's some biscuits or cake there, and we can have a chat if you like. So thank you very much.